environmental justice and human rights, peoples and communities, biodiversity and climate change, peace with nature. The church in the COP16. COP16 started in Cali, a world meeting in which we are trying to establish new agendas, compromises, and action plans for the promotion and care of biodiversity. Around 170 countries and 15,000 people are participating in the conference, amongst them the Catholic Church. Since from the 23rd to the 30th of October, we're going to have an agenda that includes around 30 activities, among them fora, congresses, reports, documentary displays, and spiritual moment in environmental justice and human rights, biodiversity and climate change, peace with nature will be some of the topics that we're going to be discussing in these activities. Through this, additional to giving visibility to different initiatives that we are carrying out in the field of integral ecology and the care for the common home in different territories of the country and the region, under the leadership of Caritas Colombia, Caritas Latin America, and the Caribbean, and the Salam. Thanks to the cooperation of multiple with articulation with the church is trying to contribute in the analysis of challenges and threats and to promote a real ecological conversion that incorporates dialogue between reason and faith and science and ethics, and also propose concrete solutions, verifiable solutions, especially through social dialogue, such as an initial attitude to restore brotherhood and sisterhood and solidarity as the first testimony of communion and spirituality. Even though this COP is received as hosted by Valle del Cauca and by the archbishops of Cali, we are expecting all Catholics in Colombia to unite to this reflection that not only implies to think about natural resources, but also in all the life manifestations, including culture, customs, and dialects. We like to invite you to consult through the website of a Episcopal conference in Colombia, the route Laudate Dem, in which the foundations of ecclesial foundations are being implemented based on the document by Pope Francis and other documents producing under his leadership. The church in Latin America and the Caribbean will be participating in this COP16. You will be able to find the official agenda of our participation and how it develops.
Buenos días con todos y todas.
Good morning to all of you. I would like to highlight when we see this video, first of all, the importance of putting together the topics of defense of human rights with the rights of the nature. Second, with to connect with the idea of work together in alliance with other people. The task group on extractives is formed by many organizations and networks in the region of Latin America and the Caribbean, connecting even Canada and some organizations in Europe. But also, what we listen is Pax Christi International, and some of the co-parts are members of the platform Peace, Democracy, and Peace, Democracy, and Human Rights.
Conecta con muchas redes y organizaciones en las cuales están nuestros aliados y hermanos y hermanas de iglesias y minería y otros y otras. Pero también en la CEILAC, la Comisión Eclesial sobre Ecología Integral.
Also with the CELAC, the Ecclesial Commission for Latin America and the Caribbean, it is something that we have been working on together in ecological conversion from a perspective of faith with the issue of human rights, international human rights, and connecting this with other religions. So in Cali, we're going to be in the blue zone with the governments, in social civil society, with associated organizations, and there will be a special tent for faith and biodiversity, where we're going to have different views and spiritualities are going to be holding meetings there in the green zone. To start with our sixth webinar, I'd like, first of all, to thank you for your presence, to remind you that this is a process that we started at the beginning of the year. This is the sixth momentum for reflection and understanding of the roles that we have to develop in our integral work in defense of Mother Earth and in defense of those who defend Mother Earth and they take care of them, with the general objectives of giving visibility of the community voices that are suffering. Second, strengthening capacity building and toolkits for the defense of the territory. And the third place, to promote actions of solidarity. Specifically today, with the topic of political and legal advocacy in human rights defense, we believe that there is a very important role to play at the level of public aspects, and it is to promote respect, the defense, and the fulfillment of human rights of all the people in Latin America and the Caribbean, especially for those who are human rights defenders and environmental defenders. For that reason, we are going to be reflecting with our specialists and the very special guests today on some specific litigation cases that some human rights defenders have been facing, some of them with a religious view or some of them with some indigenous views, and they have been threatened on the right to the right of life and other work as people who are needing hope and people who are taking carers of creation of nature. In the second place, we are going to understand and inspire some specific advocacy, political and legal advocacy in the defense of human rights and the nature. And the third objective is to promote that solidarity that is necessary with those who have given their lives defending the life organizations and peoples. Today, Padre Marcelo is not here with us, or Juan, but they are still in our heart as inspiring lights uh, who are uh, working on this pathway to in giving visibility of the communities that are in the territories, but also to continue minimizing risks for defenders. Without of any further to do, I'll like to ask Alejandro to start with the reflection. Thank you.
Muchas gracias, Marta Inés.
Thank you,
Así
Martinez.
es como iniciamos también la presentación por
That's
parte de la
how
Comisión
we start
Ecológica
the
Latinoamericana
meeting
y
today
Territorial
with
en el
the
evento paralelo denominado Agua,
in the
Tierra y
parallel meeting
Territorio, un
called
sentido
Water, Land, and
homenaje
Territory
al
with a
padre
very
Marcelo Pérez,
sincere
Juan
homage
Antonio
to Padre
López,
Marcelo,
recordando también a
Juan
nuestra hermana
Antonio
Berta
Lopez,
Cáceres,
also
con el
remembering
mensaje que su
our
siembra
sister
sea
Berta
luz,
Cáceres,
esperanza y
so that
transformación
their
por la
work
paz,
can become
justicia social
light
y
and
ambiental.
hope for just social
Hemos
justice.
también preparado al
We have
final
also
un pequeño
prepared
mensaje que les
a
vamos a
little
compartir
message that we're going to
posterior.
share.
Voy entonces a darle la
So
bienvenida
I'm going to
a el
welcome
primer
the
panelista,
first panel
el
speaker,
primer caso que vamos a
the
compartir
first
el
case
día
that we're
de
going to
hoy,
be
que es la
listening to,
defensa
and it
jurídica
is
de municipio
a
criminalizado,
legal defense
puntualmente el caso
of
de Santa Marta y Salvador. Y
environmentalist
para ello le damos la
defenders, and this is the
palabra
case
a
of
Alejandro
Salvador.
Díaz
And we're
Gómez,
going to introduce
coordinador
Alejandro
del
Diaz
área
Gomez, the coordination
extraterritorialidad del
of the
programa de
legal
desarrollo comunitario Medina
support, Maria Julia
de El
Hernandez,
Salvador.
in Salvador.
Alejandro, bienvenido.
Alejandro, welcome.
Hola, muy buenos días.
Well, hello,
Gracias por
morning.
la invitación a
Thank you very
Pax
much for the
Christi,
invitation, Pax
al
Christi,
grupo de
and
Extractiva,
to
¿verdad?
the
Y
Extractives group,
solidarizándonos
and also
con esta
expressing our
situación
solidarity
en la
with this
región y con
difficult
el caso del
situation in
padre
the region,
de
and
Juan.
particularly with the case of Padre and Juan,
Y pues
and
estando presentes,
being
¿verdad? Y
present
agradeciendo
and
principalmente la
thanking,
solidaridad que
especially the
se ha dado
solidarity
en
that has
estos
been
casos,
generated in these
especialmente en el
cases,
caso
particularly
que
in the
vamos a
case
hablar un poco
that
acá
we're
de
going to be
Santa
talking
Marta,
about
de
in Santa
Cabañas, en
Marta,
Salvador,
in
que
Cabañas,
es
in Salvador,
fruto, ¿verdad?
which is a
De esa
result
solidaridad
of that
y que el
solidarity,
grupo también de
and that
extractivismo
the
estuvo
Extractives group
pendiente,
was attentive
compartiendo y
and sharing
solidarizándonos.
and expressing solidarity.
En la parte de incidencia
In the part
jurídica
of
y práctica,
legal and
pues
political
haré una
advocacy,
introducción de
I
lo
will
que
have an introduction
constituye
of what
este caso,
constitutes
¿verdad?
this case.
Y también, como
Then
se
as it has been said, what has been the legal and political advocacy. To say that this case has two aspects. The first one is to have been able to eliminate and to be able to approve a law against mining in 2017 in Salvador. This is a landmark in history in the region, but that implied what we we had a cost of in lives, a very important one, because there were a lot of community leaders in the zone of Cabañas and Santa Marta. Santa Marta and Cabañas, especially the community, was or is conformed and affected by the armed conflict. It is a population that recuperated the zone when they were exiled in the armed conflict, and because they were hit by the state policies and by other countries, and it was affected with continuous massacres. In Cabañas, they had at least 4 or 5 serious massacres against civil society, where a lot of people were killed. Over 600 people were killed. These very serious massacres continue happening in society, and this affectation took us to have in Santa Marta the constitution of a community that is resisting and with a lot of capacities, and that based on the peace agreement in 92, it began to reborn again and to continue doing some emblematic projects like the organizations in the protection of the environment. And it is in 1993 when they create an organization called that is it's a key organization in this work, which is ADE Santa Marta, Association of Social and Economical Development. ADES had this protagonism, as I said at the beginning, of eradicating mining in the country, but it had a cost. As we're going to be talking about the criminalization, legal penalization of 5 leaders who have been freed recently. Since 2009 in Santa Marta, at least 5 environmental leaders were killed to be able to achieve the eradication of mining. This was a series of facts that are still not, the authors have not been punished. This has not been investigated, and the people related to this case, particularly a mining company in the country, that generated this situation. As a basis of the eradication of mining in 2007, recently in Salvador, and in this last government, they are taking new actions that make evidence that mining is coming back. And this is the rational information previous that against leaders who were detained for around 21 months. This government of Nayib Bukele has implemented actions that evidence this new reactivation, despite the fact that there is a law prohibiting mining. People are participating now in intergovernmental forum about mining since 2021. They have actually assigned millions of dollars to make a review or modification of the law against mining, and they have created new directives or new protocols for oil and mining initiatives, and all of this has generated specific actions that are really strong, that make this evident. With our colleagues from ARES, they were put in prison in 2023, and they are accused of something that has been the accusations that have already been alleged in their favor. But for example, they have a list of crimes related to the armed country, where they participated as part
de la ex guerrilla
of the former guerrilla
en la zona.
in the
Se
zone,
les señaló pues de
and
asesinatos
they
y
were
ocupación
identified
indígena.
as a
Un
part of the
proceso
an illicit
real pues
organization
evidenció totalmente que no
that
habían
were
pruebas,
killing people. And of course,
que
there
no
were
habían
no evidence or
evidencias
proofs of
y
these
se
accusations.
señaló contundentemente o se evidenció esta
So
criminalización
this
por
criminalization
ser
is now
líderes
evident because they
comunitarios,
were
defensores
community
del
leaders
agua y en
and
contra
defenders
de
of
la
water
minería.
and against mining.
Pasan 21 meses donde
So
ellos
after
son
21 months,
procesados, son
they are processed,
encarcelados
they are put in jail,
una serie de graves
and a series
afectaciones a su
of
salud, ¿verdad? Que
affectations
hasta el
in the
momento
health
pues son irreversibles.
that are irreversible.
Y es para nosotros, ¿verdad? Y para
And
muchas
for us and
organizaciones
for many
una
organizations,
utilización del
it
sistema
is
de
the
justicia,
use of
un
the
desperdicio
judiciary
de
system
recursos
and a
y
waste of
lo más grave,
resources.
¿verdad?
And the most serious thing
Una
is
pérdida total de confianza
a complete
por
loss of
parte de la Fiscalía de El
of the
Salvador,
trust
especialmente
on
una
the part of
unidad
the people's
que
attorney,
investiga, ¿verdad?
particularly a unit that is investigating
Casos del conflicto armado.
cases
Hubo
of
una
armed
total pérdida de
conflict.
confianza ya para la población,
People
especialmente para las
people do
comunidades,
not trust them anymore
porque la
because
captura de los líderes de Santa
the
Marta
capture
en
of the
enero del
leaders in
año
Santa
2023
Marta in
tuvo como
January
antecedente la
2023
presencia de la
had at the
Fiscalía y
background the
policía en la
presence
zona
of the attorney and
y
the police in the zone,
haber ofrecido, ¿verdad?
and having
Investigar
offered
esos graves crímenes del
these
conflicto
serious
armado, esas
crimes,
graves masacres contra la
these serious
población
massacres,
que nunca han sido investigadas,
civil
que nunca han
society
sido llevadas
that had never been
a juicio,
investigated
¿verdad?
and
A los
have never been
responsables que
taken
son
to
los altos
court
mandos
to the people
militares.
who are responsible.
Entonces se
And
traiciona la
so they
confianza
are betraying
de
the
las
trust
comunidades y de
of the
la población
communities and
y
the
se
population,
criminaliza a sus
and they
líderes, ¿verdad?
criminalize their
Pretendiendo
lives
siempre el
when they
medio
are
ambiente y
always
la
spending
justicia ambiental en el
environment
territorio.
and the territory.
Esto llevó, ¿verdad?,
This
a
took us
que
to
constituyera una estrategia
constitute a specific strategy,
política y
a
jurídica,
political
¿verdad?,
and
en un
legal
contexto
strategy
político
in
adverso, como
a
es el sistema de
political and
república
adverse
o el nuevo
political
régimen de
context
excepción
with a
vigente,
new exceptional
se fuera
regime at the moment.
a realizar acciones. Una
And
de ellas,
then we
sobre la
began
cual
to have
quisiera
some
hacer
actions, as I mentioned at the
énfasis este
beginning.
caso con
We shared this
el grupo
case
Extractivas,
with
como
the
lo dijo Inés,
extractivists
pero en la parte
group.
política
But the
podemos
political
decir
part,
de
we can
que
also say that
siempre se reivindicó, ¿verdad?, el
they
nombre de los
are
compañeros
vindicating in the name of
como
these
defensores del agua,
colleagues
¿verdad?,
as
como
water
líderes
defenders,
históricos,
as
¿verdad?,
historical
con ese
leaders
gran logro como es
with this
el
great
haber
achievement
aprobado
of
o
having
haber logrado una
approved
ley contra la
and to have
minería.
been able to pass a law
Se
against
empezaron
mining.
una serie de acciones
So a series of actions were
conjuntas,
implemented,
como fueron visitas a
as
embajadas
visits to
internacionales,
embassies and national and international organizations,
una estrategia
a strategy,
comunicacional
a communication
en
strategy
periódicas desmintiendo
with
ataques
periodical publications
involucrados
uh,
con los
in,
ataques de
in,
la misma
with the
fiscalía,
attacks of the
confundiendo a
attorney
mucha
itself,
población,
confusing a
¿verdad?
lot of the population.
También se tuvo acceso
We
a
also had
información
access to
académicos, a
the
personas
scholars and
conocedoras del
academia
tema,
for
y es
people
así
who are
que al menos
knowledgeable of the
300
team. At
académicos
least
internacionales
300
prestaron
scholars
envías
sent
cartas
letters to the
con
state
posicionamientos
with
públicos
especially their
en cuanto
position,
a
public
este caso,
position regarding this particular
participa en
case.
colectivos
They
internacionales,
participated in the
y
collectives,
aquí en
international
el país
collectives,
pues
and here in the
es muy
country,
importante
it is very important
el
to
acompañamiento de los
have
proyectos
the
contra la minería y
accompaniment
esta
of the
organización que
working
nunca ha
group on
dejado
against
el
mining,
caso
which is
en manos, ¿verdad?, de
our
esta
organization that
publicidad
never
engañosa
left
y la
the
manipulación
fake news
se está
progress
desatando.
against the organization
En
and
la
what
parte
was happening in Santa
jurídica
Marta. And the
decir que
legal part,
también pues
we also want to say that
trató
they
y creo
tried,
que se logró, ¿verdad?,
and I think we
visibilizar casos
achieved
de corrupción verdaderamente
to generate some
¿verdad?,
sensibility
como un tipo de
about this
representación de
topic
la justicia,
as an instrumentalization of
y con
justice,
esa
and with
engaño en
this
el tema de los
deceiving
delitos en conflicto armado
of
en El
the
Salvador,
crimes of
se agotan recursos
the conflict
judiciales,
army in Ecuador.
que
So now they
es
are
lamentable que el caso llegue hasta una
finishing
votación
all the
en
possible
tribunales,
legal
porque
cases,
esto ha llegado a esas
and
etapas
so
y
having
que las juezas que conocieron
and the
ampliamente el
judges that
caso no
who
hayan
were assigned these cases
decidido, ¿verdad?,
had not
cerrarlo
made
antes
decisions to
de
close
que
it
pasara todo este
before this
proceso
whole process
lamentable, los
uh,
compañeros, ¿verdad?, en detención
of the detentions
y en
of our
cárceles,
colleagues
y ellos han
and when
denunciado
they were
también
put into
todos
jails,
los atropellos que han
etc.,
sufrido.
and all
El
the
caso
different
también se
illegal things that they
eleva
have suffered.
ante
And this case also elevated to the United Nations, and in at least 4 occasions, and at least 6 rapporteurs had statements and recommended the liberation of the environmental leaders, and the part of legal protection, we had the accompaniment, we had the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights, with, first of all, with some protection measures because of arbitrary detentions, and second, because of an exceptional regime, but also with a denounce in general for being defenders, human rights defenders, and having been their rights violated, and also regarding the legal guarantees that they had the right to, because all of these were violated and they were completely not respected to these colleagues. In the final part of this process, to say that this strategy, this legal political strategy and this solidarity that we always think takes us to have that in the public hearing that took place in October, with a lot of obstacles to get to this hearing. Some international organizations participated, verifying this hearing, and so we had diplomats, some ambassadors participating from different countries, so being aware of this injustice, practice, and this violation. And this we consider took the judge to free our colleagues on October the 18th, as we shared with the network, and they then the judge was forced to decide based in according to law, and deciding that there were the trespasses that our companions were accused of did not exist, and there was no evidence, and therefore this case was not to be considered. So that revealed basically the instrumentalization that we have suffered and the dangers that these people are going through by human rights defenders, and particularly the environmental leaders. And just to close, and regarding the strategy that we have used, and I'd like to clarify here that this case is not over. The case has had only one hearing where they were absolved, legally absolved, but the attorney can continue using other tools or legal tricks to continue with other processes against these defenders, because we already pointed out that there is a background to this, and this is the reactivation of mining. What is the presence of in the country of other new businesses that are related to other countries, and particularly in the United States and Canada, there are businesses that is called towns, and Nueva Esperanza and Agrícola San Jose, who are related with a mining company that is called Titan, that also operates in the region, and that is also in Peru, and related to a Honduran bank, Atlantis. And all of this is generating again a presence of Haitians in the region. And we clarify exactly what has been the background to this process of criminalization against leaders in Cabañas and other actions that took place in the same time. Like, for example, like a siege, a military siege around defenders that took place here in the communities in Santa Marta and other organizations. I finished saying that as at the beginning, as I said, the eradication, the approval of a law against mining has been a great achievement, and this liberation, you have also supported us with this solidarity, has been a total triumph, because we consider that this is going to strengthen the fights that are taking place in our countries and in the region, because as we have seen, the fights of the communities for
para
the rights,
recuperar pues
to
nuestros territorios
bring
y
back their
también en el
territories,
caso de El Salvador,
protection of environment in
en el
Salvador,
contexto que
in the
vivimos
context
para
that we are
recuperar la
living at the moment,
democracia,
to try to
para
get
tratar de
back to
recuperar el
democracy,
Estado de Derecho.
to
Y una parte, pues El
continue with the
Salvador no ha venido
legal state,
hasta la
something
fecha
that El Salvador has
y
not
que
been
no
able to
puede
achieve,
pues
and that we
continuar
cannot continue
en estas acciones
in
de
these
represión,
actions
¿verdad?
of repression
Y de ataque a
and
las
of
personas
attacks
que luchan
against
por los
people
derechos
who are
humanos
fighting
y que
for
están
human
protegiendo
rights
la vida en
and
nuestro
who are
país.
protecting.
Así que me quedaría acá por si hay
I'm going to stop here in case.
preguntas y reacciones, ¿verdad? Gracias.
Muchas gracias, Alejandro. Una situación y un caso bastante crítico por todo lo que nos ha contado precisamente
This is a
del
very
contexto
critical
de
case from all
defensa
the
de
things you
derechos
have told
humanos,
us
logrando
about the
una ley que
context
pues
of human rights
la
defenders,
educación que se
to be able to achieve
prohíbe
a
la
law
minería con todo lo
prohibiting
que ha
mining
costado
and
para la
the
comunidad
cost of
campesina.
the approval of
Y ha
that law
sido
for the communities and the
precisamente
people.
una frase que se
And this is
vuelve
a
muy
phrase
lamentable, y es
that
que a
is
los defensores de la
really,
vida les
really
cuesta la vida.
bad, because
Y
those who defend
como
life
este
have to pay with
caso,
life.
pues
And
nos
how in
muestra un
this case,
ejemplo
you show us an example
necesario, importante, y es que para
necessary
que
and
no haya
important,
impunidad,
so that
debemos
there's no
mantener
impunity.
vivo el
We need to
caso,
keep in
debemos
mind,
mantener
we need to
vivo
keep the
la
case alive.
incidencia
We need
a
to
nivel
continue having
nacional, a
legal
nivel
and political
internacional, y seguir
advocacy at the
moviendo y
national and international
articulando las
levels
diversas
to continue
estrategias y
working and
campañas.
articulating the
En
different
ese
strategies and
sentido,
campaigns. In that sense,
agradecemos,
I want
Alejandro,
to
a
thank you,
tutela
Alejandro,
federal, doctora
for
María Julia Hernández del Salvador.
Doctora
Vamos a
María
continuar
Hernández
entonces
from
con la
Ecuador,
ponencia
and the moment we're going to
de
continue with
red de iglesias y minería.
the
Han realizado
network
un
Church
ejercicio
and
muy
Mining that
importante
have
de incidencia
developed a very
también
interesting
política en
advocacy,
Europa,
political
adentro de
advocacy
iglesia y
strategy
también
in
afuera,
Europe,
con la
inside churches and
caravana de
outside,
ecología integral.
with the
Le damos
ecological
la
integral
palabra ahora a
caravan.
Valentina.
So,
Adelante, Valentina.
Valentina, now you are. The microphone is
Gracias,
yours.
Alejandro. Buenos días, buenas tardes para
Good
algunos,
morning, good
dependiendo
afternoon for
también
some
desde qué
people, depending on where
parte
you are.
del mundo nos están escuchando. Bueno, mi nombre es Valentina,
My name is
vivo en la
Valentina.
Patagonia Argentina, en
I
territorio
live in the
pehuenche,
Argentinian
ya hace 3
Patagonia
años,
for
como
3
parte de
years
una asamblea
as part of
socioambiental,
social environmental
justamente con el pueblo
assembly,
mapuche.
and with the
Generamos herramientas
Mapuche
en defensa
people,
del
we
territorio
generated tools
y
to
del
defend the
agua popular
territories
que atraviesa el
and the
verano,
water,
una gran
which
sequía
was
y
we
muchos
have
proyectos educativos también
a
con el
terrible
gobierno
drought
que va
in the moment.
avanzando sobre los
And this
territorios
project is advancing the territories.
de Argentina, ¿no? Hace 2 semanas que
2 weeks
regresamos de
ago,
la
we
tercera
came
caravana
back
por la
from
ecología
a
integral.
third
Es un proyecto que
caravan.
se enmarca en la red de iglesias y
This is a
minería,
project that is a
con
part of the
respaldo
church and
técnico y
mining,
idóneo
including
y el
Reforming
acompañamiento
Scene
del CELAM,
and the accompaniment of Salam,
y que se enmarca dentro de un
and that
proyecto
is
de
framed
desinversión en
into
minería,
the
donde justamente son muy
lowering
importantes
the
los diálogos
investment in
con el norte global,
mining,
¿no? Que
and
es
where
un poco el
the
protagonista
dialogue
del
with the global
saqueo y de la
north is so
condena y de lo que
important,
también
particularly
compartía
because
mi
all the
compañera
use
anteriormente.
of the
Como para
resources that they are
introducirlos un poco,
performing in
la
the region.
caravana
Just to introduce a little bit, this
estuvo
caravan
en España, en
was in
Francia,
Spain,
en
in France,
Bélgica,
in
en
Belgium,
Italia,
in
Austria y
Italy,
Alemania,
Austria, and Germany,
desde el 15 de septiembre
since
hasta el 13 de
December
octubre,
15 to the
con
October
la
the 3rd,
participación
with
de
the
distintos compañeros
participation
de América
of
Latina,
different people from
un
Latin
compañero de
America,
Brasil, de
a,
Maranhão, y una
a
compañera
person
de Minas Gerais,
from
de dos
a
pueblos
Maranhão,
indígenas
Brazil, and
afectados
from Minas Gerais,
por la minería de litio
and
y
some
también por el
indigenous people who are
ferrocarril
affected
de la
by
empresa
lithium
Vale,
mining,
que
the
seguramente
volume
muchos de ustedes
people
la
affected by the
conocerán,
volume
por la hermana
company,
Gladys, que hoy también nos
by
está
the sister
acompañando
Gladys, who is
un
accompanied
poco,
us today,
que viene de territorio de
who is
Bolivia,
coming from the
otro
Bolivian territory,
compañero de
and
Perú
another
afectado por
person from
minería de
Peru
litio
affected
y
by
uranio.
lithium, mineral, and uranium.
Bueno, por Enrique, también uno de
By
los compañeros
Enrique,
sacerdotes que
one
nos
of
acompañó desde
the
Perú.
priests that
Bueno,
accompanied from
Guillermo
Peru,
Cavalli, yo y una
Sharma
compañera de
Cavalli,
Chile.
and myself,
Así que
and
tuvimos
a partner from
una
Chile.
gran
So we
narrativa, ¿no?
had
De muchos
a
territorios
huge
siendo
narrative from different
afectados y
territories
también en
who
esta
are being
dualidad
affected,
que
and particularly with
se
this
habla
duality,
de la
where
transición
we talk
energética
about
y
the
del
energetic
saqueo de los
transition
minerales de seguridad.
and
Muchos de
how
nosotros estamos afectados
the
por
waste
esa
of all the
dualidad. Pero
resources
también otros de los
We are in countries where mining is very important, but also some people who are affected by the mineral exploitation who are uniting to this movement. Because you know that in Latin America, this transition, this mining energetic transition, which was the topic of our caravan, continues being much more mining and much more active for the territories. The purpose of the caravan was to be able to talk and to have advocacy in political and ecclesial topics regarding the issue of extractivism and energetic transition. This caravan has a very strong denounce, particularly to civil society, but also with banks, with churches and congregations who are working precisely in those banks who are investing in our territories. And we believe that the priority is to be able to recognize where the whole chain starts, what is conversion, and so that the dialogues with the global north are so important to be able to change and nourish the view that we have about the indigenous peoples and to make them understand that their lifestyle is sustained, is affected, that every time a new card is built, they are affecting our territories, and that sometimes when the banks invest money, they are investing in death. And many of the agendas that were with the European Parliament, with those who are making decisions about the future of our territories, and particularly generating laws and legal frameworks to listen to the voices of the people. We continue talking about the situation of extractivists that has been decided by governments and businesses. And the caravan just makes it evident the importance of the need to listen to the peoples and to have them express their voice, to say no, just to say no to destructive projects that they have been suffering. I think that's basically the focus that we have in the caravan, is the privilege of being able to listen to the people who are living in the territories that the governments and the territory have already decided that they are sacrifice zones. I also think that this is fundamental to give the communities, when we talk about reparation. So the caravan made evident that there are other kinds of economies that are promoting life and not the accumulation of capital. And in that sense, I think it is essential to be able to close the gaps between the different views of what it means to have good living in Latin America, which is completely incompatible with this new paradigm of transition that is behind the uncontrolled use and loitering of the spaces. Another fundamental aspect that I wanted to share with you is that this year, they are different from the previous caravans. We met with partners from who are being affected by global North organizations too, which is also important to highlight because there are all people who are working in the European Parliament. So now they claim that they are doing mining at home as if it were something positive. But one of the things that we said is, no, don't do it in the home. You have to take care of your places, because the experience in Latin America of killings, of displacement and violations in the territories can also help you see how this may affect you in the north, to get organized and to begin to act too. And this is why we created the idea of the solidarious communities, because the idea is not to promote mining in the north and we get rid of this, but it's more to promote the idea of defending life, because it is defended with Latin America and Europe. Just to allow Gladys time to speak, the caravan has left some signs of hope, particularly in spaces of civil society, but also in the church, in our call for rethinking their practices, the colonial practices, to rethink
escuchar
who are we going
cuando
to begin
hablamos
to
de
listen
minería y
to when we begin
extractivismo,
to
si
talk
es
about
a
mining and
quienes se
extractivism?
benefician económicamente o a
If it
quienes
is
están
to those who
disfrutando
are getting the
la
economical
protección
benefits,
de
or
nuestro
if it is
medio,
the
¿no?
ones who are
Em,
suffering and living their lives
Sobre
in the protection of
todo,
the
creo
earth.
que
And
nuestro signo
particularly,
de esperanza
our
que hay que
sign of
seguir
hope that
trabajando
we need to
es
continue
el
working
llamado a
is
revisar
the
los códigos
call
de
to
ética
review the
de las
ethical codes
congregaciones, de las
of
instituciones
congregations and
religiosas,
institutions,
de
religious
las
institutions,
organizaciones que muchas veces
of
trabajan con territorios latinoamericanos,
organizations that are also
para,
working with
para que haya una
in Latin
coherencia, ¿no?
American
En el camino de la defensa de la
countries,
vida.
so that
Una
we can
coherencia
also have
económica,
some
una
kind of
coherencia en el discurso y sobre
coherence
todo
and
una coherencia
both
en
economic
la
and then in the
acción,
discourse
porque
and in the
sabemos
actions that we
que
take, because we know
defendemos la vida,
that
pero el conjunto de
we
la vida,
defend
el
that
recuperar las
life,
lenguas,
but the purpose of the
las
life is also
prácticas
includes protecting
ceremoniales,
the
la
languages, the
espiritualidad,
ceremonial
los
practices,
ríos, las
the
montañas,
rivers, the mountains,
y eso fue un poco también
and
por
that's
García, ¿no?
basically
Ver
what
las narrativas y
it
entender
said,
que defender los
basically to promote these
territorios
narratives.
no es solamente el territorio en sí, sino en su
So it's not only
conjunto.
the territory.
Así que fue un poco eso el camino de mi
So
vida.
that's basically the case.
Muchas gracias, Valentina. Vamos entonces a darle la palabra a la hermana Gladys. Ella es misionera carmelita.
Okay,
Es
now we're gonna have
actualmente la
Hermana
misionera en el
Gladys. She is a
departamento del
Carmelita
Beni,
sister.
Bolivia, en el territorio indígena
She is in
Kismaneño,
Bolivia, in
del
Kismaneño
sector
territory,
Yacuma,
in the
municipio de
Yacuma
San
territory,
Borja, y forma parte del
municipality of San
Centro de Derechos
Borja.
Humanos de
And
la
she's part of the
Iglesia
human
Apostólica
rights
Repam.
network of
Vive y lucha
Repam.
de la vida en
And
territorio indígena con
she
estos hermanos y
is
hermanas
sharing
que viene luchando
their
desde
work with
hace
the
más de
communities in
30
those
años por
territories
el
for over 30 years
reconocimiento de su
for the
territorio por
recognition of the
parte del Estado
territories
boliviano.
on the part of the Bolivian
Entonces,
state.
hermana Gladys, adelante.
So, Sister Gladys, go ahead.
Buenos días, buenas
Good morning,
tardes, con
good
todas y
afternoon,
todos por allá.
with all of
Sí,
you.
como verán, me encuentro en la casita donde vivo, aquí en el territorio
I'm
Chimane,
living
y
the
pues para
Chimana
contarles
territory,
lo
and
que
here
ha
I am
sido
to
esta
share,
experiencia tan
to tell you
significativa
about this
de la
meaningful
tercera
experience
caravana
in the
del
third
encuentro de
caravan
iglesias y minería.
from the
Yo
network on
personalmente,
mining
pues
and
sí
mining.
estoy muy
Sorry,
agradecida
mining
y
and churches. I'm
creo que se ha
particularly grateful
fortalecido mucho mi
because I think that
compromiso
my
en
compromise
esta opción, en
in
este
this
compromiso
option and this
por Cristo,
compromise for
creo
life.
que
I
reconozco y
think that
valoro
I
esta
value and I
iniciativa de la
recognize the
caravana
initiative
por
of the
estos
caravan
diálogos que me parecen
because of
tan
these dialogues, because I
significativos
think that they are meaningful
entre norte y sur.
between
Llevar
North and
estas
South,
voces,
to
estos
take these
gallos, estas
voices,
demandas,
these
¿no? Para
demands,
hacer sentir
to
también, no
make them
solamente
also
como toma de
feel
conciencia, sino de
like a little bit like
responsabilidad,
generating
¿no?
awareness, but also
Como
the
muy
issues of
bien dijo
responsibility,
Valentina,
as Valentina
en
mentioned,
estos diversos
in
espacios,
these
¿no? Y
diverse
unos de los que
spaces. And
consideramos
one
muy
of the ones that we
importantes, ¿no?
consider
Por
very
ejemplo, la
important,
iglesia.
for example, is the church.
Como la
How
iglesia
the church,
europea
the European
también,
church,
desde la inspiración del
from
Papa
the
Francisco, que
inspiration of
nos
Pope
invita
Francis,
a
who invites
crear
us
estas
to
nuevas
create these new
economías de vida,
economies of life,
economías amigas de la
economies
Madre
who are
Tierra,
friendly with Mother
de
Earth,
solidaridad,
of
de economías
solidarity,
ecológicas ante las
ecological
economías de muerte,
economies,
toca muy
facing
fuerte
the
el rol de la
death
iglesia,
economies,
¿no?
touches the
Porque
role of the
sabemos
church,
que
because we
el
know
cambio de
that
rumbo que ha
the
tomado la
change in
humanidad o
routes
que
that
está
the
tomando
humanity is taking at the moment,
concretamente a través de estos
and
proyectos
particularly with all of these
extractivistas, estas
extractivist projects that
inversiones en
are
minería,
taking place and these
es
investments
donde
in mining,
toca el
is where
nervio
this is really
fundamental de la
touching the
iglesia. ¿Por
core
qué?
of the
Porque le está
fundamental,
tocando la
the
vida.
fundamentals of the church, because it is
Para mí que
touching upon
trabajo o
life.
vengo, digamos,
And
haciendo
for
procesos así
me,
en la Repam,
who
en
I'm working
casos
in this
muy
particular
fuertes
case
de vulneración de derechos
of
de la
the
muerte,
violation of human
para
rights
mí ha sido una
and
riqueza
deaths,
muy
for
grande
me, this has been,
ver y escuchar
very
otras
rich
voces de mis
to be able to
hermanos de
listen to
Latinoamérica
other brothers
con
and sisters
estas
from Latin America
afectaciones y
with those
necesitados
affectations
por la
and
minería
huge
en sus
impacts because
territorios,
of
¿no? Entonces,
mining in the
creo
territories.
que
So I
el Papa
think that
nos está
the Pope
lanzando
is giving us
muchos mensajes de cómo la iglesia
messages
tenemos que
of how the
también tomar
church
una
need
posición
to begin
muy
to change the
comprometida y
position,
muy clara, muy
compromise
profética
and
en estas
compromising and
situaciones,
prophetic
que
in those
también es
situations,
parte de una
because this is part of
evangelización
our
por la defensa de la
evangelization
vida.
on the
Entonces,
defense of
yo
life.
rescato mucho,
So
por
I
ejemplo, una
really
de las
highlight,
de
for
los
example,
compromisos que
one of the
hemos
compromises that
asumido que tiene la
we have
caravana a
felt that
través de
the
los
caravan
3 años
has
que estamos
for
ya
almost 3 years
realizándola.
that they have
Por
been
ejemplo, el
developing this.
compromiso de la
For
Iglesia de
example, the
Austria,
compromise in
el
Austria, the
cual
Church in
como
Austria,
documento lo hemos
whereas
entregado a las
we have been able to share a
diferentes
document to different
episcopales, espacios de
episcopal
iglesia,
conferences and
donde
church spaces,
animamos
where
a
we
vivir
encourage
y a comprometer
people to
también
live
esta
and
acción
to
tan
commit
concreta de
themselves to
protección
this
de los
very
códigos éticos,
particular
es decir,
action-taking strategy
donde
where the churches and congregations, those institutions are depositing their monies, and we sometimes don't know that these monies are being taken to make investments in Latin America in mining, in these extractivist projects. So this ethical code that agrees with the coherence that we have in the gospel is very important, because this is needed so that from the church itself we can have a strong advocacy in these other realms, political, social, of compromises for the defense of life in the limiting the investment in mining. I think that this dialogue has been fundamental, that we have been able to hold in the church in Europe. We, I personally want to say that we have noted some positions that are a little bit defensive, but many other positions of compromise, of goodwill, of a lot of open ears to these testimonies and these voices that in a way begin to confront their own positions, not only to work in this ethical code, but also in being able to look for other means of ways of living and production, other ways of living and inhabiting the planet, other ways of stopping this consumism. So I think that this is fundamental to have this relationship, this dialogue, and these linkages that we are creating with this church in the north, because they help us precisely to create those fraternal communities that Pope Francis is inviting us to have. How do we generate the dialogue with the north and south to be in tune with this critical but also evangelic view that the church should be taken on? When we were listening to the cries from the earth and the cries from the people, the poor people. So I think this is fundamental, and I think that there has been a very meaningful experience receiving this information, and some and questioning some positions. So like people saying, we're going to begin to have more incidents in media, we're going to get more documentation. So I think that it's been so good to see all these testimonies. There's been reactions of what in other places we are aware that is something else is missing, which is what we think that the secularism that we are working on, we cannot do anything or justify ourselves because it's too difficult to do this, and how can we do this? I think that this is a good moment to we need to continue working with the church that has to do with the announcement of a new life for these peoples, but also with the denounce of the things that generate injustices and death for the peoples, because the global north does not know the impact that mining have in our Latin American countries, in the Amazon itself. They don't know. And maybe they know about them, but it's part of their hope to say, because in a way, there's a natural outcome of the development economist and colonialist model that they are using. So they follow a model. But this, what this is producing and generating is another story. We need to think about criminalization. And as church, we need to put a contribution in in deciding how can we accompany, what can we do from the church, and mining network. From the REPANS, we are accompanying these processes. From the CIMICs, we are accompanying these processes, running the same risks that our brothers and sisters, women, men, children, and elder, who every day are putting their bodies to defend their territories. Not only to defend their territories, but because we also know that this is about life for everybody. It seems as if we didn't breathe the same air, or we don't drink the same water, or we don't use or receive the products of nature. But this is economic extractivism sees this as the possibility to produce merchandise and exploitation of those merchandises. And so the church has a very important role. So I think that something that is really strong and very meaningful in the dialogues that we have had with the churches in Europe, because it has created these spaces to say, well, we don't want any more situations of death. We want to generate these spaces of reflection, not to continue with these violences, but not to continue this death system that make the church accomplices, or as an excuse not to get involved in those topics, or not to accompany those processes, or not to accompany life that is being threatened in these peoples. So Pope Francis has said that there is a presence pastoral more than that one of an office. So it is very important to highlight that as a caravan, we feel really motivated by the gospel, but also by the wealth of messages from Pope Francis, who is uh, who is putting us in situations saying, or either commit ourselves or don't commit ourselves. And from the diverse the institutions in the church, we have a very important task in front of us, which is the defense of life in all of these realms, with concrete actions that are affecting or where life or the territories are being affected. This is not only the review of the ethical codes, but for example, the conference in Madrid suggested, for example, more activities based on the experiences from Latin America. Seems different. So what we are left with is to continue doing a follow-up to those commitments, those initiatives that are coming up from the different churches in the global north that have people and organizations in the civil society who are very committed. But we need to do the follow-up to make sure that all of these things are completed. And so this is not just something written on a piece of paper, but we can really advance in this life project, the process of generating life, uh, abundant and good life. So this is something that we need to continue promoting from the church. Thank you.
Muchas gracias, hermana Gladys.
Thank you very much,
Ha
Sister
sido
Gladys.
realmente muy
This has been
inspirador,
really inspiring,
muy importante cómo han
very
logrado
important how
promover precisamente la
you have been able
educación
to
y esta
promote this
incidencia a nivel global,
discussion
como
on
lo han
this
referenciado y
advocacy in the
claramente
global
lo
north, particularly in
decía
Europe.
Valentina, cuando
As
hablamos también de
Valentina said, when
extractivismo,
we talk about
muchos debemos
extractivism
escuchar
mining,
quiénes
who
son los
should we
que
listen
deben
to?
realmente
Who
poner
are
el
the ones
valor.
who should
Y en
speak
Europa,
up?
en los
In
espacios de
Europe,
tomadores de decisiones, por
those
lo general,
spaces for decision
pues
making
son las
are
empresas, son los
businesses,
gobiernos
the
que de
government,
acuerdo a sus intereses
according to
a largo
their
plazo
particular
buscan
interests,
promover este
look
tipo de
up
economía y de
for these
negocios
kinds
que
of
después nos
economies and
llevan a
businesses
un
that then take us
contexto
to
de crisis
a
climática, de crisis
context of
socioambiental
climate crisis
y
and
después
social
ellos mismos
environmental
vuelven y
crises.
promueven un poco el
And
espacio
then
en el cual por ejemplo
they
estamos, que son las
don't
COPs,
think, which
las
is, for example,
famosas conferencias de las
in the
partes,
COPs, for
en las
example, this
cuales
is
nos
the
encontramos,
issue of
nos
the discussions that we're
escuchamos,
having,
pero siguen
where
ellos
we
tomando
listen to
decisiones.
people,
En
we
este
listen in all of these
caso,
cases, but
también
decisions are not
hay un
really
pequeño
being
paréntesis en
taken.
esta COP, pues
In
la
this COP, for example,
oportunidad de que los
I had the
pueblos y las
opportunity
zonas
to see the
verdes en
different
verde nos podamos encontrar y
peoples in
escucharnos
the green
y
zones
poder seguir
had a
tejiendo y
meeting, and we
construyendo esas
continue
diversas
knitting and
alianzas,
building these
redes y
different diverse
plataformas para poder
alliances
compartir
and
estas
platforms to be able
experiencias.
to share these experiences.
Agradecerle a la hermana Gladys
I
y
also want to thank
felicitarle.
Sister
Me
Gladys
parece muy
for the
clave
things
el
that
resaltar este tema de las
you
comunidades fraternas.
mentioned of
Cómo
the
nosotros cuando hablamos del
fraternal
norte global no
alliances.
caemos
When we
también
talk
en el
about the global
prejuicio de decir
north,
que todo el
we should
norte,
not fall
todos
into the
estamos en una
idea
parte
that
en los
of the
países del norte
prejudice that
global,
all the
entonces
people in the
ya
global
por
north,
ende están a
for the
favor
fact
del
of being there,
extractivismo, a
are in
favor
favor
de
of
la minería.
extractivism.
También han
There
sido,
are people there
hacen parte de
who,
su cultura, pero que en esos
although this
diálogos
is part of a culture,
fraternos, en
but
ese compartir de experiencias, pueden
sharing these
conocer
experiences,
y
they
apoyar
can get to know firsthand
precisamente el respeto de
how
los derechos
these things
humanos
can
y
be
de la
promoted and the
naturaleza a
protection
nivel
of human
global,
rights,
pero
and
también
but
pueden
also
empezar un
they
ejercicio de
can
activismo
start
en
an
sus
advocacy
territorios.
exercise in their territories.
Especialmente, por ejemplo,
Particularly,
podemos resaltar
we can
lo que
highlight
pasa en
what is
Estados
happening
Unidos
in the
frente
United
al
States
fracking, en
with fracking,
Alemania también con
in
el tema de
Germany
la minería,
with
y
issues
cómo
of
estos
mining,
son ejemplos precisamente de
and how
hermandad
these are examples
y
of
de
brotherhood and sisterhood
solidaridad, como llama
and
el Papa
solidarity
Francisco, de las comunidades
by
fraternas.
Pope Francis.
Vamos entonces a darle la
Now we're
palabra
gonna
a la
listen
octava
to
ponencia.
our last
Vamos
presentation.
a
We're
compartir,
gonna
escuchar el
share
caso de la
the case of
situación de Chiapas
the
en
situation of
México,
Chiapas in
una
Mexico,
situación bastante
the situation that is
compleja
very
por
complex
el reciente
because of
contexto
the
y
recent
nos lo va a
case.
compartir Jorge Luis
And
López, abogado
uh,
integrante del
this
Centro de
is
Derechos
Jorge Lopez,
Humanos
who is a
Fray
lawyer
Bartolomé
from
de
the
las
Human
Casas
Rights from Bartolomé
en
de las
Chiapas,
Casas
México.
Lawyers Group.
Adelante, Jorge,
So,
puedes
Jorge Luis,
activar tu cámara
go
y
ahead if you're
micrófono.
going to
Sí,
activate your
claro.
microphone. Thank you.
Muchísimas gracias
Thank you very
a
much
todos y a todas los que
to all of
nos
you
siguen, nos están
who are
observando
following today from
desde
other
otros lugares, desde otros
places,
espacios.
from other spaces.
Agradecer esta oportunidad de
I
poder
also want to
compartir
thank you
con los
for being able
compañeros y
to share
compañeras
this opportunity with
pues esta
people,
cruda
with all their
realidad, ¿no?
experts in this
No
very
solamente
difficult situation,
aparece en
which
Chiapas, en
is
México,
something
sino que
happening in
en
Chiapas,
otros
but
países
in
de
other
Latinoamérica y
countries in
pues
Latin
de
America
todo el resto del mundo, ¿no?
and the
Entonces,
other parts of the
para
world.
iniciar, pues es
So
como
to start with,
compartirles un poquito
I'd like
cómo
to
está
just
la
to share a little bit
situación,
of the context
sobre todo
of
el
the situation
contexto Chiapas, México, ¿no?
in Chiapas, Mexico,
Ya
which
algunos
is
compañeros que se
something that
dedican
some of our colleagues
al
who
activismo de
are
derechos humanos, pues
working
hemos
on
estado
human rights activism
denunciando, ¿no? Toda esta
have been
crisis
denouncing
en el tema
all
de la
this crisis
violencia,
in the issues of violence
relacionado sobre todo
related
al tema de la
with
disputa de
all the
los
dispute
grupos
of the
armados,
illegal
sobre
armed groups,
todo en la parte
particularly in the
frontera con Guatemala, que es nuestro estado de
borderline with
Chiapas,
Guatemala,
que es
which is our state
prácticamente
of
el puente
Chiapas,
para poder
which is the bridge
cruzar
to be
a
able
los
to
Estados
cross to
Unidos,
the
¿no?
United
Entonces
States.
somos un
So we
estado
are
en
a
el
state
que
in
andamos
which,
pues en una situación vulnerable, ¿no?
in a very vulnerable
Entonces,
situation.
mencionar que pues aquí en
Just to
Chiapas,
say that here in
uno de los
Chiapas,
factores
one of
importantes
the
que
factors
podemos
that is very
mencionar
important that we'd
sobre
like to mention
este incremento de
about this
violencia ha
increase in
sido el
violence
flujo, ¿no?
is
El
the
flujo del tránsito
influx, the
que
transit
deriva
comes
sobre este corredor, le
from
podríamos
this
llamar, ¿no?
corridor or
Latinoamericano,
this
que
Latin
uno de
American
los negocios
corridor.
fuertes ha sido
And one
el
of
tema
the
de la
businesses has
migración,
been
el
the
traficar
issue
con las personas
of human
indocumentadas o las
trafficking and
personas que
migrations
transitan por
with
este
people who
corredor
don't
y
have
que
documents.
anhelan la esperada
And
sueño
those
americano,
who
¿no?
are, looking
Este
for the
pasaje es irse a los Estados Unidos y pues
American dream.
generar mejores
So the
condiciones de
idea
vida.
for them is to
Ese es
achieve
uno de los temas
to make it to the
importantes
US.
que se
So this
pueden
is one
ver,
of the issues that
fruto de
we
esta
can see in
temática de
this
la crisis de violencia
issue of
aquí en
the
Chiapas. Otro de
violence
los factores,
crisis
como
in
ya
Chiapas.
mencionaba, es el tema
The
de
other
la
factor
disputa, ¿no?
is
Entre
the
estos
issue of dispute
grandes
amongst these
sujetos
two
o actores ligados
actors
al crimen organizado,
associated
pues
with
está
organized crime.
el tema de disputarse las
The
plazas, ¿no?
issue, for example,
Entonces,
of defending
y bueno,
their
dentro del
positions.
tema de derechos humanos podemos
In the
mencionar
issue of
que
human rights, we
habemos
can
esta
mention that
situación de
at least
violencia
this
sobre estos
situation of
grupos
violence
militares
amongst the armed groups
en estas
in
controversias
these
que han tenido, pues
controversies
han
that we
habido
have had.
múltiples violaciones a derechos
There have
humanos
been
a los
many
pueblos o a
violations
las
to human
comunidades
rights
originarias. Nuestro estado,
to
hablemos de Chiapas,
originary
somos
and
un
ancestral
estado en el
communities.
que
Chiapas is
estamos
a state
reconocidos por
who
ser un
is
estado
recognized for
plural.
being a
Tenemos en Chiapas
pluricultural
existen
state.
demasiadas
At least in
etnias,
Chiapas, there are many
demasiadas
ethnies,
comunidades
there are different
originarias, varias
communities,
lenguas,
a
varias
variety of
culturas.
languages, various
Entonces,
cultures.
dentro de esta
And
situación del
so, in this
fenómeno de violencia y
situation,
las
the
disputas que
situation
han
of
habido, pues se ha
violence and
enfrentado
the
el tema
disputes,
de los
uh,
desplazamientos masivos.
the issue of
Tenemos ejemplos claros, por
massive
ejemplo, en
displacement
2016,
has been seen.
el municipio de
In
Xochimilco se desplazaron
2017,
aproximadamente 5,000
there
personas.
were around
En
5,000 people
2018,
displaced.
desde el
In
2015 al 2018,
2018,
en
15
Aldama,
to 18,
Chiapas, un
in
aproximado de unos
Chiapas,
2,036 personas
around 2,000
indígenas y
people,
raciales
indigenous
desplazados
cities,
por
were displaced
grupos
by
armados, grupos
armed
de
groups,
carácter paramilitares.
by paramilitary
Y bueno,
groups.
otra de las cuestiones
And
es
another
el
thing
tema
has
de las
been
privaciones
the
arbitrarias
issue
arbitradas,
of
¿no? Enfocadas en
illegal
prácticamente la
detentions,
criminalización,
focused
no
basically on the
solamente a los defensores y
criminalization, not
defensoras de
only to
derechos
human rights
humanos, sino
defenders,
también a los
but
pueblos y
also
comunidades
to
originarias, porque como
ancestral
el
peoples and
Estado, la
communities,
Fiscalía
because the
conoce que
state, the
los pueblos
attorney, they
originarios son las
know that
personas que
the
desconocen
ancestral
sobre
communities are
cómo
the
se manejan todos
ones
los
that
términos
don't
jurídicos, los
know the legal
procesos.
terms, the
Entonces,
processes, the
pues son las
resources.
personas más susceptibles de
They
poder
are
ser
people who
criminalizadas.
are
Entonces los capturan, los
more
procesan
susceptible of being
y
criminalized,
prácticamente logran
and they are
sentencias
captured,
condenatorias
they
porque las
get
personas pues no
sentences,
cuentan con los
etc.
recursos para
And
una
people
defensa
don't have the
adecuada.
resources to have a proper defense.
Otra de las cuestiones importantes
Another
dentro de
aspect
este
that is very
contexto de
important in this
violencia
context of
está el tema de
violence
las
is the
desapariciones
issue
forzadas,
of forced
que
missing
pues
people,
Chiapas prácticamente
because
es un
Chiapa
récord en
is
el tema de
has one of the
desapariciones,
records
no
in people
solamente aunque el
missing.
Estado
even though the municipal presidency and the president of the republic have mentioned that Chiapas is one of the states that doesn't have high levels of violence, we want to say that this is one of the states that have this shameful record of being one of the states where the violence indexes have been incremented because of this issue of violence. Another violence to human rights has been the issues of arbitrary detentions, also of killings, people who have been killed, cases where some state agents have had extra legal killings up to civil society and to other people associated with armed groups. So what else in Chiapas? So a growing situation of nepotism, if I can call it that way, regarding the aggressions to peoples and communities, particularly in the projects or mega projects, because the peoples and communities in this state and the issue of autonomy and resistances. So peoples and communities say, we don't want projects in our communities. And the state has awarded that with the militarization of the municipalities. In Mexico, a few years ago, we had a situation where the National Guard was present and in our state, we have in almost every municipality, we have a military base of the National Guard. And this National Guard has had as a consequence that the communities feel totally insecure because they have denounced for many years the activities by the military has generated many more violations of human rights in their territories. They know the history in the context because initially it was military against paramilitaries, had generated criminalization of the peoples and communities. So now we are experiencing the situation that the issue of violence, the federal president saying that in order to counteract these situations, we're going to have agents of the National Guard, which is in fact militarizing the territories, not only the communities who are fighting for autonomies, like for example from the Zapatist Freedom Military Army, and that also vulnerates the rights to self-determination, which is written in the Constitution. And the other thing that we find here that is a matter of concern is the issue of attacks to followers of churches, to the people who are denouncing in multiple occasions a situation of violence. And one of the clear examples that I can mention at the moment is the word that was developed by Padre Marcelo, the priests and the human rights defenders in the Catholic Church and the Diocese of San Cristobal. Padre Marcelo began to work for many years from his work in the church as a human rights defender. He was devoted to working and denouncing of these situations that resulted in violence with young people who were involved in alcoholism, drug addiction. Also, an area that Padre Marcelo began to work with them in denouncing not only the authorities and the MP, but saying that this is happening in my community or this is happening in this certain municipality. But the situation of denouncing this to the state, I'm sorry, denouncing the state, he was a subject of a detention order, and then that led him to his killing. This was also associated with smearing activities and because of the state government would say, what is a priest doing this? Why are you talking about human rights? What does it have to do? What does he have to do with the defending the voices of the people? So all this group of state journalists began smearing and generating defamation of his work. and that served the state and for all the people interested in that. So in the work that he developed of Padre Marcelo was that he in 2015, as a human rights center, we accompanied Padre Marcelo, the one that was developed there, and whenever he wanted us to accompany him. And in 2015, the Inter-American Commission of Human Rights gave him protection measures for human rights defenders. And this the presentation of a case in the commission really proved that he was suffering a huge risk for a person as a community and human rights defenders. So between 20 to 20 to 24, 15 to 24, Padre Marcelo had protection measures on the part of the Inter-American Commission, but one of the issues or mistakes is that these protection measures were not sufficient or efficient, because the state did never worry about attending the bottom line cases of attacking the criminalization and the misinformation and all of these phenomena that I mentioned here, of who were the intellectual agents who ordered his killing, and all the difficult physical risk that he was exposed to. He was definitely a victim of the state, and the power does not guarantee the defense of human rights, mainly that it generated a climate or environment of that led to his killing. This is one of the things that concern us. We mentioned that this action, and not only with the killing of Padre Marcelo, but other defenders of human rights, at least in Chiapas or Mexico, take us to a genocide policy, an extermination policy for human rights defenders. Because they don't want Chiapas and Mexico, this is given visibility. And we can say that defenders who are given visibility to this, and all of the work that we're doing towards peace and the rights of the peoples and communities, automatically become a target. They are affected by a different affectations. So how do you see this from a legal point of view and the political advocacy that we have? We can see that at least in Mexico and for other countries, the issue of legal action, we have experienced that this is not the best viable route. Because if you go to the People's Defender, Ombudsman, this might take years, and basically they re-victimize and they delay the processes for many, many years to actually reach to a sentence. So if you can go to the protection level, but then that leaves a space only for international instances. And this is where we see a little bit of hope that when we give visibility at the international level, particularly with the announcements that we are presenting there, we have seen that if we go to the Inter-American Commission or the UN commissions, then Mexico feels that it is being observed, and when they are being pointed at the international level, then that's when they really begin to pay attention a little bit more, to work more in the investigations. So in the internal policy making, we have seen that for us, it is much better to go directly to the international level. Now, regarding the policies, the work that El Frame is working for over 35 years has been the strengthening of peoples and communities that are again organized. Many that get organized, and this is something that we are working on and giving human rights defenses and instances of where to go and be heard. And many of the peoples and communities have taken the risk of having public actions like peregrinations. Peregrinations not only of 100 people or 7,000, 10,000 people, in which all of them talk about they ask no for the killing of human rights defenders and no to the attacks of people working in churches. So one of the actions has been peregrinations, massive peregrinations on the part of people who are fighting. And another one that is working that here in Chiapas and Mexico, sometimes they make public denounces and they say, this is happening in my community, pay attention to this. So with all of these things, just to finish, I'd like to say that the state, in this new change of government, there might be a case of omissions.
Porque la presidenta actual pues ha generado como esta situación de
So this has generated these
bueno,
cases of lack of attention
como opacar la situación de
to
violencia y dice, bueno, eso no
opaque
está
the
pasando aquí.
situation of violence, saying this is not happening there.
Otros,
I have all
otras
data,
informaciones
I have other kind of
que
information
dedican menos
that
tiempo
basically say, no, they basically
la
devote
cuestión
only a
aquí en
few
México para que los
seconds to talk
ciudadanos
about
estemos
public issues
tranquilos, ¿no?
so that
Entonces,
people are
el
okay.
fenómeno de las omisiones
So the
muy
issue of
alto en nuestro
omission is going to continue affecting what the work we do. Thank you very much.
Muchas gracias, Jorge Luis.
Thank you very much for
El-
this.
Muchas gracias por el compartir de la experiencia.
Thank you for sharing your
Es muy
experience.
interesante cómo precisamente tienen esa
It is
lectura
really important to
integral
see how you have
sobre
this
todo
integral
en el
view,
fortalecimiento también
particularly in the
de la
strengthening of
incidencia política.
political
Sí
advocacy.
podemos resaltar
You
como
can
de tres
highlight
casos
in the three
precisamente la
cases
integralidad. Es un poco lo que
the issue
queremos
of
también y como lo
integrality.
nombraba Martínez en el
As
objetivo
Martinez
de
mentioned this,
este webinar
one of the
inicial,
purpose of
es
this
cómo
webinar
logramos
is to see
comprender
how we can
desde tres
achieve an
experiencias
understanding from three
concretas,
different
reales,
experiences,
difíciles,
real
cómo ha
and
sido
difficult
precisamente la
situations,
lucha por
how we
el
have been
respeto de los
able
derechos humanos,
to
la
advance
exigencia
in
de
the
derechos,
fights in the
cómo
promotion of
también
human
la
rights,
estrategia
how
jurídica
the
es
legal
importante, pero no
strategies
debe
are
ser la única
important, but it's not
vía
the only
que debe
way.
estar acompañada
And
y
it should be
respaldada
accompanied and
precisamente de la
supported by
movilización,
mobilization.
de la denuncia,
If
que nos
I
lleva
denounce,
también precisamente a la necesidad de
that
ser
takes us to
cambios
the
de las
need of
estructuras
those
sociales,
changes in the
esos cambios
social
también
structures,
culturales, cómo
the
la
cultural changes,
sociedad,
how
cómo
the
en un
society,
determinado territorio
how
se
at a
comprende
certain territory,
la
we begin to
legitimidad y la
understand the
importancia de
legitimacy
un
and the
defensor de derechos
importance of
humanos.
human rights
Eso
defenders.
especialmente en lo
This
que
is especially what
recientemente se ha venido
we
hablando
have
del Acuerdo
recently
de
been
Escazú,
talking
que
about
lo
at the
compartimos
Escazú
también
agreement,
el webinario anterior en la
and that we shared in
lusofonia,
the previous
nos hacía
session, in the fifth session.
ese llamado,
We
cómo parte del
heard this
Acuerdo de
call.
Escazú,
How
los
within
ahora
the
defensores
Escazú
y
agreement,
defensoras del
the defenders
territorio
of the territories
son,
are
digamos, reconocidos en la
recognized
importancia de su labor para
in
el
the
cuidado y la
importance of the work
protección de
and
los
the
derechos
protection of
humanos
the human
y
rights.
dejan de ser
And they stop
estigmatizados,
being
como lo
stigmatized,
compartías, Jorge,
as
a
Jorge, you
través de
mentioned,
campañas en
through
medios de
campaigns
comunicación
in
que
social
son o
media
filiales o
and the
corresponden,
media in
digamos, a
general
los intereses por
that in a
parte
way
de algunos
respond
sectores
to
económicos y
some economic
políticos
sectors or
que
political
generan
sectors
precisamente la
that generate
revictimización,
this
pero además generan
re-victimization, but also
contextos de riesgo que
generate
llevan
risk
después a que
context
cuando
that
pasen estas
then
cosas,
result,
tal vez como sucedió en el caso de
as it
Santa Marta,
happened with Santa
entonces
Marta,
sea
uh,
lavada la imagen,
that
digamos, justificándose a partir
they
de
justify their
prejuicios y cosas
actions
que no
with
tienen realmente
prejudices
sustento
and with
legal o
accusations that don't
jurídico
have
propio,
legal foundation
quitándole el
or
respaldo
evidences,
social y la
taking
movilización.
away
De ahí la
the social
importancia,
support and
como lo
mobilization.
compartían ustedes
So
también
as
en la
you
caravana,
shared before in
de
the caravan,
lograr en el marco
of
de esta
allowing to have this
incidencia política y
advocacy,
jurídica,
political and legal
realmente un
advocacy,
tejido
to have kind of a
comunitario de
network
base, que es
of
parte
a
esencial en lo
community
que desde el Grupo de
network
Trabajo
with
sobre
grassroots
Extractivas
people
de Pax Christi International
working
se
with
buscó
the
como
issues of
ver cómo
extractivism
logramos fortalecer el
initiatives.
intercambio
How
de
can we
experiencias
strengthen the
para que
exchange of
en esos
experiences
diálogos
so
las
that in those
herramientas,
dialogues,
las
the tools,
realidades,
the experience,
las
the realities,
perspectivas de
the
trabajo
perspectives, the
puedan
work
aumentar,
perspectives can increase?
que logremos cada vez tener
So we
mayor
can
respaldo,
achieve probably
movilización y
more
con ello
support,
precisamente mayores
mobilization,
logros.
and probably higher achievements.
Voy entonces,
I'm going
les
to,
invitamos a que si tienen alguna pregunta o comentario,
if you have any
lo pueden hacer
question,
en el
you
chat.
can use
Las
the
personas que
write the questions in the
están
chat. For
en
those
el
who are
Zoom,
in
las
Zoom,
personas también que
for
están en la
those who are
transmisión del
in
Facebook
the
Live.
Facebook Live,
Antes teníamos la oportunidad para las
before
personas
we
que
had
están
the
aquí en el
opportunity
Zoom de
for people who are
poder
here in the South to be able
habilitar todo el
to
espacio.
open the whole
Desafortunadamente
space, but
tuvimos
unfortunately,
inconvenientes en
we
una
had
sección
some
antes de iniciar un
issues
Facebook Live.
with
y
a
nos
Facebook
tocó
Live.
como
So
restringirlo a este
we
modo
had to
seminario
restrict it more
allá
in seminar
del
mode
boicot
because of a
a
boycott
estos
and the spam
espacios.
of these spaces.
Entonces, yo quisiera darle
So
la palabra
I'd like to
nuevamente a Alejandro
invite
para
Alejandro again
preguntarle,
and ask him
digamos, un poco la intención de
a little bit
estas
about the
situaciones
intentions
nos
behind
deja a veces
the.
como opacados, ¿no? Como que, bueno, la situación es
So
difícil, estamos en un
sometimes we feel that the
contexto de
situation is different,
violencia,
that there's a
hacemos
context of
un trabajo
violence,
muy importante a
and
nivel
we are
nacional,
working
internacional,
a lot in
nos
international,
agota
on national
todos
levels,
estos esfuerzos
and we get tired
y
of these
seguimos en la
efforts,
misma pelea, ¿no?
but we are still
Actualmente
working on the
comprendo
aspect.
entonces están en el desmonte de la ley
So I understand
que
that
prohíbe la
basically they are
minería, lo
attacking the
decía
law that
un
prohibits
gobierno
mining.
como el de
A government by
Bukele
Bukele
promoviendo
is
nuevamente entonces la
promoting
inversión de
the
empresas mineras
investment of
extranjeras.
mining
¿Cómo
companies, foreign
lograr
companies. So how can we achieve
sostener este proceso de esperanza? ¿Qué
this process of hope?
aliento hay en los movimientos
So what
sociales o ambientales en El
energy
Salvador
do you
para
see in the
continuar
movement to continue
precisamente
working,
defendiendo su territorio
defending
y
the
buscando, como
territories
lo
and
decías, el
recuperating
Estado social de derecho y la
the
democracia?
social legal
Democracia que
state?
no es,
The
debe ser sobre todo
democracy that
apropiada desde
should
las bases
be
populares, ¿no?
proper
Siendo un
and in coincidence
ejercicio
with
de
the
respeto
root,
institucional, sino del
the grassroots
empoderamiento
communities and the
ciudadano.
empowering of
¿Qué
the
nos podrías
citizen.
compartir
So what can you
respecto a esto?
share with us today?
Bueno, sí, yo
Yeah, I say,
primeramente pues
first of
felicitar,
all,
¿verdad?
I wanted to
El trabajo
congratulate
que han
the work
expuesto los
that
compañeras, compañeros.
our colleagues have presented today,
Decir de que
and just to say
estos,
that
digamos, movilizaciones que son las
these
que han llevado o
mobilizations
la
that
presión, ¿verdad?
are the ones that
Pública,
have taken into
específicamente
public
acá en
pressure,
Santa Marta,
particularly in the
yo
Santa Marta
señalaba,
case.
¿verdad? Que
I was pointing
incluso
out that this has
dentro de
been
un
a
estado que ya
triumph
cerró
of the
todas las
state that already closed
oportunidades
all the opportunities
a la
to
movilización, a la
mobilization,
expresión, ¿verdad?
to expression.
Entonces,
So,
acá nosotros
so
todavía
here
continuamos
we
con otras
are
personas, ¿verdad? Hay que
with other
agregarle
people.
que son
We need to add that
detenidas, son líderes
who are
en
being
diferentes
detained,
temas
leaders who have been
por
taken to
aplicación
prison
del régimen, ¿verdad?
by the regime.
Cada vez más se está
More and more,
intensificando la
this is
acción
becoming more
represiva.
intense, the
Ya se
repression
están
of
dando
the state.
despidos en gremios,
So
¿verdad?
they are people who have been fired in some
Salud,
businesses,
educación por las
in
protestas,
the health and
en
education because of the
cuanto a
protests
reducir los
regarding the
presupuestos sociales
reduction of
y aumentar la
investment in
militarización,
society,
como bien
in
señalaba
social projects,
Jorge,
and
que es
to
la
increase
única
the militarization,
política, ¿verdad?
which is the
Represiva
only
que se da en
policy
nuestros países.
that can be presented
Y
in our
creemos
countries.
nosotros
So we
que
believe that
esta solidaridad de
this
la que hemos
solidarity
hablado, esta
that we have been
cohesión
talking
que ha
about,
llevado
this
todo en este
coercion
caso aquí a nivel nacional,
at
pues
the
da esa
national level
esperanza, ¿verdad? Para
gives you
fortalecer
that hope
las demás
of
luchas
strengthening
para
the other fights
defender, ¿verdad? Estas
to
personas, aún el
defend
régimen tiene
these
muchos inocentes.
people.
Este régimen se ha tenido la
This
capacidad
regime has been able
mediático, ¿verdad?
to use
Y
the media
ocultar, ¿verdad? Todas las
and to
graves
hide
violaciones que ya son
serious
patrimonio de su humanidad.
violations of
Y en
human
esa
rights.
línea,
And in
en el
that
caso de
line,
Salvador, esperaríamos,
case of
¿verdad?
Salvador, where we
A
would
través de este grupo
hope is that
extractivas,
just
toda la
through this extractivist
solidaridad
group and
también
all the solidarity,
en la
we
misma
could have
iglesia,
some
¿verdad?
kind of incidence in the church in the country.
La jerarquía
The
eclesial del
hierarchy
país
in the
sí ha
church
sido
hierarchy has been
muy opaca, ¿verdad?
very
En
opaque
cuanto a
in
pronunciarse en
their
estas graves violaciones
statements
de
regarding those
modo ejemplo,
violations.
¿verdad?
We
A
see the
nivel del
examples
sur
of
y
the level of the
México, ¿verdad?
South
De
and in
estas
Mexico,
personas valiosas.
these people,
Desde que se aprobó la ley contra la minería, la
since
iglesia
the
pues se ha ido
law against mining was
retirando,
approved,
¿verdad?
the
De
church
ese
has been
posicionamiento que
moving
señalaba
away from
mal,
that position
¿verdad?
that sister
De denunciar
represented
los proyectos de
of
muerte,
denouncing
de ser coherente
death
con su
projects and to
evangelio
be coherent with the gospel
y, y utilizar, ¿verdad? O dar seguimiento a
and
este
to be able to do some
posicionamiento
follow-up
profético
to
que se ha
this
adoptado.
prophetical view.
Lamentablemente, un señor Romero a nivel internacional, pues su caso sigue impune. Y eso revela las voluntades,
And
¿verdad?
this tells you about
De
the will,
acompañar, pues, los posicionamientos en defensa de la
the
vida.
positions in the
Pero
defense of
nosotros
life.
esperamos que este
But we
triunfo
really
igual,
hope
¿verdad?
that this
Siga coercionando.
current
Santa Marta
movement
no hubo
continues
ningún día que
strengthening.
decía en
In
esta
Santa
estrategia
Marta, there was no day in
de
this political
posicionarse,
strategy
de hacer
of
presencia,
positioning and to be
¿verdad? Y
present
de gritar
and to
al
cry
mundo
out
de que se
to the
está
world that they are
criminalizando a las personas
criminalizing
defensoras,
human rights
que la
defenders.
estrategia de este
That the
gobierno
strategy of this
es
government
establecer
is
nuevamente estos
establish
proyectos
again
de muerte
death
quizás
projects.
termino, ¿verdad?
And maybe I would finish by
Cada
saying
vez hay un desgaste de esta imagen,
there is like an
nada
overuse
menos.
of this
Este grupo de
position, and
gobierno de esta familia que hoy
this group of the government,
pues
this family of Bukele
se
family,
ha investigado y
they are
evidenciado ya
now
que
being investigated.
no es
It
nada
is clear it's
diferente
not
a los
something
anteriores.
different from the other
Solo esta familia ha adquirido
dictators.
en estos
Only this
últimos años
family
al
has
menos
purchased at least
64 propiedades,
64
¿verdad?
properties.
Tiene empresas
They have
y eso es lo
businesses,
que se
and this
conoce,
is
¿verdad? Y
what
la
is known.
línea
And the line
empresarial
and the business
y
line,
extractivista pues
extractivist,
ha aumentado, ¿verdad? La
has
intrusión.
increased
Entonces,
the attempt to
agradecemos,
finish with this law.
¿verdad?
So we thank
Estos ejemplos, agradecemos
these
también pues
examples, and
la
also we thank
solidaridad que
for
se ha
these
tenido
fights
desde este
and the
foro.
solidarity that has been
En el
presented in
caso de
this
los
forum.
compañeros de
As in the
Cabañas,
case of the Cabañas,
los vamos a estar informando
we're going to
así como de
continue
otros casos,
informing,
¿verdad? De
as well as
líderes
other cases of
sociales, comunitarios,
social community
sindicales que
leaders
están detenidos
and
y muchos
union leaders who
están
are
muriendo dentro
detained.
de las
And
cárceles
many of them are
sin un
dying
juicio
in
justo.
jail without
Y
a fair
pues
trial.
dentro de este estado que ha
And
cooptado las
within this
instituciones,
state that
como
has
bien lo
co-opted
decían
the institutions,
las ponencias,
as was clearly
la parte
mentioned in my
jurídica no es
presentation.
la única que se
The
puede
legal
llevar y
route is
apelar
not the only
pues
one.
a
So
la
we
solidaridad,
appeal to
¿verdad? A
solidarity,
los pronunciamientos
to the statements
y
by
a
people,
incidir en otros
and to have
países
direct
para que estas
advocacy in other
situaciones
countries
cambien
so
y
that
los
these
gobiernos se
situations
sientan
change and that the governments feel
observados,
that they are observed,
se sientan
they
comprometidos y
feel that
tengan
they are
que dar
committed, and they have to be
informes, ¿verdad?
liable and
Tengan
give
que dar
information
respuestas claras
or give answers, clear
y
answers,
no
and not
situaciones
just
mediáticas o la misma propaganda
media and
que se
propaganda
está
they generally use
dando
with
en las
the
redes, ¿verdad?
media
Y
that have
confundiendo
also
a
been
muchas
co-opted
personas.
and that has a lot of the population
Es muy
confused.
importante
This is very
las
important
estrategias que hemos hablado acá
regarding
y
the
debemos
strategy that we have
seguir
developed here.
adelante
And we
como
need to
lo siguen
continue
nuestros
working
demás hermanos y
as
hermanas de toda
our
la región.
sisters and brothers in the region are.
Así es, Alejandro, muchas
That's
gracias.
exactly so,
Y ahí la
Alejandro. Thank you very much.
importancia, como lo
This
decías,
is
de
also
compartir
important
estos
what you
casos, porque
say that these
son
cases, because you said
victorias
that these are
que aumentan la posibilidad de
victories
compartir
that
los
increase the
aprendizajes
possibility
y los
of
retos,
sharing
pero
the
también
learnings,
alientan
the
a que
challenges,
se
but
vea
also
que es
because they
posible
encourage
realmente lograr
other
justicia.
people to show that it is
Y
possible
es
to achieve
complejo
justice.
en el marco de la
It is a
impunidad
very
tan
complex
grande,
in, regarding
pero no
impunity,
debemos
but
desfallecer, al
we should
contrario,
not
debemos
stop working on this.
articularnos
We need to
más, generar
get more
mayor
articulated.
redes, mayor
We really
solidaridad,
need to
para
generate more
que este
solidarity
foro
and
siga
networks so
siendo
that
un
this
canal de
continues
contención,
being a
pero que
contention channel,
ojalá
but that
dejen de ser
hopefully
casos
this it can be
específicos donde se
more
logre
specific
sea
cases
realmente la
where there are
particularidad
achievements,
sea
but
la norma,
more like
se
this will be the
cumpla,
norm,
como lo decías,
that
el
the
Estado social de derecho se
law,
garanticen
the social state of
respeto a los derechos
law
humanos.
is
Vamos a darle entonces
followed.
ahora la palabra a
So
Valentina y
now,
Gladys para que
Valentina and
participen
Gladys for
ya en
some
el
of their closing
cierre
remarks
de esta sexta
of this
sesión del ciclo de
sixth session
webinarios.
of the cycle of
Nos
webinars
compartan un
to
mensaje final de
share
esperanza, cómo
the,
lograr
the message of hope.
cómo seguir esperanzando en el marco de la incidencia política y
How
jurídica.
can we
Ya
generate
nos
more hope?
compartían la importancia, por
You already
ejemplo,
told us about the
de
importance of
la nueva ordenanza, los nuevos
the
códigos
new
éticos,
ethical
la
codes.
directriz que sacó
The
la
directives
Conferencia
or the
Episcopal de
guiding
Austria,
principles in
precisamente
Austria
para poder, a partir de una
to
reflexión
then generate
eco-teológica,
some
revisar y
eco-theological
promover la
view
desinversión y la
and
minería,
promote
precisamente por el gran
diminishing of
trabajo que
investments in
han
mining,
hecho
precisely
diversas
because of the great work
organizaciones,
that
tanto desde
a lot
la
of
educación y
organizations have made,
minería, para contar
among
esa
them the
realidad a partir de las voces
mining and church
de los
network,
territorios, las
to
voces de
tell
las
the voices of
comunidades que
the
están
territories
ahí
and the
sufriendo
communities that are
precisamente ese
suffering
impacto de las empresas y de un
of
modelo
the
de vida,
businesses, and
especialmente en el
a
norte
way of
global,
living, particularly in the global
que
north,
nos
that
tiene en dificultades
somehow keeps us
socioeconómicas.
in
Valentina,
complex
adelante.
situations at a social ecological levels. Valentina,
Gracias, Alejandro.
thank you,
Sí, creo
Alejandro.
que
Yeah, I think
el
that
mensaje puntualmente y que
the
fue también el que
message
trabajamos en la caravana tiene que
in the
ver con esto
caravan
de la
has to
denuncia
do
a
with
este modelo de
den-
transición que hoy se
denouncing
planta
this
como
transition
justo,
model
como
that
inclusivo,
is
como
presented
popular,
as
que bien
fair
sabemos que no lo es.
and popular, and we all know
Entonces,
that
un
it is not.
poco el camino de
So
construcción y
the
ver cómo
road of
poder
construction that we are
cambiar la narrativa,
proposing
poder
is to
demostrar
change the
cuál es
narrative
lo
to
que se esconde
demonstrate what is hidden behind all of these projects, and what the projects and businesses are hiding in all of these projects and in these concepts of the fair transitions and sustainable development. So sustainable is something that comes really from the peoples, and that energies, for example, some of the communities where we work with don't even have access to energy, and then that we need to see all the territories and what is happening with the mining projects. So what we need to do is to generate ownership of this narrative and to see how the church can promote these kind of narratives among the communities. So I don't know, Gladys, if you have something else to say. I think that it is urgent, and today more than ever, we need to feel united, connected, because we live a similar context, and this is the lives of everybody, and particularly the ones that are in front of the territories that are threatened. So we continue connected profoundly with this common home, with this life that exists every day, to feel that we are connected as brothers and sisters with the realities that we share, with the fights, with the accompaniment, with the presence, for the compromise. So all of these are going to generate, to find these roads ahead that we're searching for. Solutions, true solutions, not fake solutions, as proposed by these projects, activist projects. I think that life is what is central, and everybody from different angles, from different places, from different compromises. And I always say, believers, not believers, in my group, for outside my group, everybody, yes, everybody, for life. We need to continue building bridges and linkages. So life is the one that continues living in those peoples from us, from God, who is flowing through all of these resources like the water, the air that we breathe, all the life that we have. So the message is to continue working for life, continue generating brotherhood and sisterhood, dialoguing, looking amidst this diversity. And I think that I have a lot of hope to continue working with the caravan. I think that we have planted a lot of seeds that are going to begin to yield the results with time. We know that the results are not immediate, and we are committed to living with those processes, to give time, to provide space, to continue working to get the results. So that's basically to put all our heart into it and to feel in communion with life. So we put our little part, and the Lord will provide a great support to all of these things for peace, which is the result of justice. Thank you.
Muchas gracias, hermana Gladys.
Thank you, Sister
Recuerdo que
Gladys.
sí es como,
Thank you. That's
momento
how
de
we are
crisis
looking for these moments in crisis,
socioambiental, pues hay una
of
crisis
environmental
en el
crisis.
paradigma, en
There
la
is also
narrativa de
the crisis and the
desarrollo. ¿Cómo
narratives and the development
logramos en
narrative.
esa base
So how can we achieve
poder
in this
generar un
basis,
proceso de
be
conversión
able
en
to generate
de
a
buen
process of
vivir?
conversion
Y nos lo compartían desde la
the
red de
good
iglesias y
living?
minería. ¿Cómo
And this is something
entonces
that
lo
Mining
hablamos,
and
lo
Church
dialogamos,
Network
pero a
talked about?
partir de los
So we
territorios,
begin to
a
talk about those
partir de
dialogues
quienes
based on the territories,
realmente
with the
cuidan,
grassroots people, with those
protegen y
that
garantizan
protect
los derechos
and
humanos,
guarantee
para
human
que
rights,
desde
so
esa
that
base, desde
they,
nuestro ser, podamos, como dice la
from our
hermana
own
Gladys,
being, as Sister
encontrar
Gladys said,
esa conexión con lo divino
we
en el
can find
agua,
this
en la
connection with the
tierra, en el
divine in the
aire y en el
water,
fuego,
in the air,
y
and
que
the fire,
realmente
and
sean
that really
propuestas
we
sostenibles
find
de cuidado por la vida.
sustainable projects for
Jorge,
the protection of
adelante,
life.
te
Okay,
doy
your
los
closing
minutos
remarks.
para
Please,
compartirnos
if you
un
have 2 minutes
mensaje de
to share
éxito,
your
de
closing
esperanza.
words.
Sí, gracias. No, pues
Thank you.
pues yo
Well,
creo que uno de los mensajes más
I think that one of
importantes
the
podría
most
ser
important
el que,
messages could be
pues, con varias manos, o sea,
with
podemos
a lot of
lograr varias
hands,
cosas, ¿no?
we can
Que si
achieve more
somos
things.
entre más personas,
The more
seamos más
people,
colectivos, entre
the more
más,
collectives we have,
podamos visibilizar la
the
situación en
more we
nuestras
can be
regiones,
visibility to the
pues
situations in
eso
the region,
ayudará a lo que decía Alejandro, ¿no? A
the
que el
more we're
Estado,
gonna be
pues, se
able to
comprometa,
achieve.
¿no?
And the
Y
states will
sienta
have to
su trabajo
commit,
y
and they
sobre
feel
todo
observed,
compartir el trabajo de
and
resiliencia, ¿no?
to share
Una de
the
las
work of
acciones de apuesta
advocacy
en el trabajo que nosotros
in the work
desarrollamos
that we are
vendría
developing.
siendo el de visibilizar
That
no
will be
solamente a
giving
nivel
visibility
regional,
not
o
only at the regional level, but also at the
con otros
international level,
espacios que
with
puedan
other
escuchar
spaces that can
otros
listen
compañeros
to
las
us,
situaciones que estamos viviendo
other colleagues that can
en
hear
nuestros
what we are
contextos, ¿no?
experiencing in our
Entonces,
contexts.
un mensaje de paz que yo
Well,
diría
a
es que
message that I
unidos
would promote
podemos
about
lograr
peace
varias
is that
acciones, ¿no?
united we
Y
can
pues así como el trabajo
achieve
que
much
realizamos
many
cada
more
uno de
actions,
nosotros,
as well as the actions that each
podemos
one
darle
we are
pues
achieving.
mayor
We can have a wider,
difusión, mayor
bigger
exposición de otros espacios, ¿no? Pues
exposure.
agradecerles muchísimo
And
este espacio,
I want to thank you all
gusto
for
poder
this space.
verles a través de la
It's
pantalla
great to see you all through this
y
screen.
pues eso, me quedo con
And
eso, compañeros.
I would leave that with this.
Gracias, Jorge Luis,
Thank you.
muchas
Thank
gracias.
you, Jorge Luis. And
Realmente ha sido muy provechoso el
has been
compartir
really
experiencias
fruitful to share experiences
que difundieron, compartieron a partir de estos
that you
casos,
shared based on
simplemente
these cases in
visibilicé
different
cómo se
difficult
pueden
contexts,
construir
how we
estrategias
can
de
construct
incidencia política y
a
jurídica para
political,
acercar los
legal
posibles a los
advocacy
objetivos de estas
strategies
organizaciones que va
for
más
the
allá
objectives
del
of those organizations that go
reconocimiento, ¿no?
beyond the
Y
organizations
abre los
themselves, but that
espacios
open the
a quienes han
spaces
sido víctimas
to
de la
those who have been
criminalización
victims of
por parte de
criminalization
agentes
by
estatales o no
state
estatales,
agent or
a quienes
non-state
han sido
agents,
violentados por
and
parte del
those who have been
populismo
violated
activista
by the
y
extractivist models.
que seguimos
And
viendo en
we
estos
continue
casos
seeing in these
grandes logros
cases a
para
lot of
poder
achievements
asimismo seguir
to be
tejiendo
able to continue
parte de
knitting,
este proceso.
and this is part of the
Entonces,
process.
para cerrar,
So, just to close,
agradecerles
I
nuevamente,
want to thank you all
invitarles
again,
a la
and to
sesión de
invite you to
cierre de este
the
ciclo de
next session,
webinarios,
the
Tejiendo
closing
Esperanza en
meeting
tiempos de
of
transiciones
knitting
a la vida de la
hope in
armonía,
terms of
que
hope,
finalizaría
but
en
it's going to
sesiones el
end
22 de noviembre,
on the
el
22nd of
viernes 22 de
November,
noviembre, para que
Friday, the
participen.
22nd of November,
Quiero
so that you can
compartirles
register.
al
I'd like to
final,
share this.
nosotros somos como Pax
So
Christi
we are
Internacional,
Pax Christi
hacemos parte
International. We are
también
part of
de la
the
Comisión de Ecología
the
Integral
CELAC,
Latinoamericana
which
y
is the
Caribeña,
Latin American and
y
Caribbean
hemos
Commission and
tenido en
Ecology
este
Integral Commission.
sentido
And in that sense, we have had
la
the
posibilidad
possibility
de sumar este
to
ciclo de
add
webinarios a la
these
ruta
webinars
Laudate
to the
Deum,
Laudate Deum
que
route or
son un
route,
proceso de
which is
escucha
a process
activa de las diversas
of active listening
organizaciones
with the different
que buscamos
organizations that
precisamente
are
estar a partir de ese llamado,
seeking,
de esa
um,
reflexión de la
based on this
laudato,
reflection of the Laudate Deum,
promover
to
en
promote
unión, en solidaridad, en
in
hermandad, en
solidarity and
fraternidad,
unity and brother and sisterhood
unos caminos para
some
enfrentar la crisis
roads to
socioambiental.
confront the social
Y
environmental crisis.
les comparto un
And
mensaje que el Papa
I
Francisco
share
envió
something
precisamente
that
muy corto el día
um,
miércoles en el marco del
Father
evento
Pope
en
Francis
zona verde que hizo
sent
la CEILAC.
this message in CELAC.
CELAM, Consejo Episcopal Latinoamericano.
Deseo que trabajen, se entusiasmen por defender nuestra casa
Continue
común.
working enthusiastically.
O la defendemos entre todos o perdemos todos.
If you don't defend, we don't work together. If you don't do this together, we're going to lose everybody.
Perfecto, con este sentido mensaje del Papa Francisco
This
cerramos
message
la
from the
sexta
Pope.
sesión del ciclo de
We close
webinarios.
this sixth
Muchas gracias
session.
por
Thank you very
participar. Nos
much
estamos
for participating, and we
comunicando para la
continue
próxima, para el
talking for
cierre
next
y la clausura de este
meeting
ciclo.
for the closing of this
Buen
cycle.
día.
Good day.